Let's get some business news now then. Marcus Carlson is with us in the studio. And Marcus, we're talking about Greece because it's getting pretty tense now, isn't it? Just a few days to go until the end of the month. And more people are warning that Greece could default on its debts and could be kicked out of the Eurozone.
Absolutely. One such warning came from an unprecedented direction this Wednesday. This is the Greek Central Bank came out to say that a Greek exit from the Eurozone would be painful. This is an unusual step because this is the first time that any Greek authority mentions the possibility of a so-called Grexit. This warning came as talks over a 7.2 billion euro aid tranche are still deadlocked. The Greek government says it cannot agree to the cuts the creditors are asking for in return. The focus is now shifting to a meeting of Eurozone finance ministers on Thursday. Progress still seems far off, though, which increases the risks of Greece defaulting on its debts. EU officials say that Greece needs to budge, but the country's prime minister is not showing any signs of doing that.
The insistence that this money must come from new cuts in pensions, for us, is an incomprehensible insistence. And we must now, not with the technocrats, but with the political leadership in Europe, come to a political decision.
What we are doing is making reasonable, moderate, realistic proposals so the reforms can be too. The ball is in the Greek authorities' court. We are not going to engage in negotiations ahead of the Eurogroup. These will be discussed during the Eurogroup meeting. Now we have to be cautious that we don't have much time left.
Now, we're just getting through news this evening that the Greek Prime Minister-elect Tsipras and the President of the European Commission, Jean-Claude Juncker, have held a telephone conversation. Things have been pretty tense between these two gentlemen in the past few days, so perhaps a sign of progress, but we've seen signs of progress many times before, so we'll have to keep an eye on this for you. Now, Greece has been negotiating for months with the creditors, and during the talks, the market expectation has been that there would be a deal. Earlier, I spoke to Angus Campbell, senior market analyst at FX Pro in London. He says that the risk of a Greek exit from the Eurozone has increased from a market perspective, although analysts do expect that there will be a deal. Let's listen in to what Angus told me earlier.
There's clearly palpable fear, palpable concern, a lot of wait and see from other investors who just want to see what the outcome of these negotiations are tomorrow at the Eurozone finance minister meeting. The problem, of course, that we face is that, as you were saying just before I came on air, is that there is no new proposal from Greece. And, you know, despite the efforts from European leaders, from Juncker as well, trying to get them to commit a new proposal, it seems like the finance minister of Greece is going there tomorrow without any new proposal. It's like going to a birthday party without taking a present.
That was Angus Campbell there speaking earlier. Now, the Greek situation weighed on European markets on Wednesday. All three main indices this side of the Atlantic ended in negative territory. The ASE in Athens ended sharply down around about 3%. In the United States this hour, the markets are in positive territory. Things turn around after a Federal Reserve meeting that wrapped up a little bit earlier. This as investors are digesting the signs that's coming out of the Fed when it comes to higher interest rates. The Fed kept interest rates steady this time around, and it refrained from giving clear clues on when it will start hiking those rates. That's seen as good news for investors because they would rather keep these very low interest rates that we have seen since the days of the financial crisis. Let's move on now. We're going to turn to the aerospace sector. The pace of new orders at the Paris Air Show slowed somewhat during the third day of the event. European playmaker Airbus still landed the biggest order in number of planes. Brazil's Synergy Aerospace agreed to buy 62 aircraft of the type A320neo. Boeing seems to have got the single most lucrative contract. Meanwhile, a Russian cargo company ordered 20 jumbo jet freighters. Boeing has scraped together firm orders for around $16.7 billion so far in Paris. That's slightly more than the $16 billion worth of business racked up by Airbus. Now, the Paris Air Show is more than just a sales race. It's also about a chance to look at where the aviation industry is heading in terms of innovation. And here's something to think about next time you fly. There's a good chance that several parts of the plane came from a printer. Stephen Carroll has more.
3D printing is being used in more and more industries, not least in the aerospace sector. Airbus says that more than 1,000 parts of its A350 jet have been made using a 3D printer. Take, for example, parts of the aircraft wall, but also some of the housing for cabling. And even when it comes to aircraft seats, we have parts including the handrest and the housing for the seat that have been made using flame-retardant plastic on a 3D printer. And it's not just inside the plane that the technology is being used. 3D printer manufacturer Stratasys can also calibrate its machines to make parts of the wing.
You can build layer by layer, so instead of building from a block of material, you can build the inside with a structure which is going to make it much lighter. So the benefit for the manufacturer will be the low consumption of fuel, so the cost per part being on a plane is going to be helping them to reach their target.
As well as producing less waste, the speed of manufacturing using 3D printing is an advantage too. Most of the parts can be made in a matter of hours.
All right, there we go. Progress in the aviation sector right there for you. Let's talk you through a few other stories that we're watching. Shares in FedEx are under pressure on Wall Street this Wednesday after its latest quarterly earnings fell short of expectations. The delivery company reported a loss of $895 million in the quarter that ended in May. The firm says it was hit by a $2.2 billion charge for a change in accounting of pension costs. Carmaker Peugeot, Citroën and the conglomerate Bolloré are entering a partnership to make electric cars together. The deal will see Peugeot Citroën assemble and distribute the model Blue Summer using batteries developed by Bolloré. The two have also agreed to market car-sharing schemes. Bolloré struck a deal last year with Peugeot's French rival Renault to make the model Blue Car. And here's a question for you. What city in the world is the most expensive for expats? Well, you see the answer right there at the bottom of your screen. It's Luanda, the capital of the African country Angola. That's according to an annual survey by the consultancy Mercer. It ranks cities based on the cost of things like rent, transport, and restaurant visits. Hong Kong is number 2, and Zurich in Switzerland is number 3. There we go. Paris not even in the top 10, I believe.
Was it not even in the top 10?
Yeah, no.
I wonder what it is about Luanda in Angola that makes life so expensive.
Well, you have to think about it. It's from an expat perspective.
Yes,
it's not actually for locals. So it's from an expat perspective and how expensive it is to perhaps live a Western lifestyle in another country.
Interesting. Wasn't expecting that. All right, Marcus. Thank you very much indeed. Marcus Carlson there with the business. We're going to take a short break here on France 24. Stay with us. More news and headlines still to come.